Hi everybody, welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm making something new. I've never made this before. I'm calling it quinoa and bean chili. It could be vegetarian or it could be vegan. The only thing you would have to change is the beef broth to either vegetable broth or even just water. Okay, we're going to start by getting some olive oil into our pot. About a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. And I'm going to chop up the onions. This calls for a cup of onion. And when you're chopping it, you want to consider what else is going to be in your dish. And what I like to do is try to keep everything the same size. It helps with the cooking and it helps with the texture. Now, if you want to change your texture a little bit, you can have things different sizes. It's up to you. Give it a try. See what you prefer. I do not cut my onions like everybody else does. I do it a little bit different. I find this way easier. I find that it's better to handle the knife where you're always cutting down. I don't like cutting towards myself. Even though I wipe the knife off with my hands, I don't like to cut towards myself. So I cut it in half, cut it in slices, and then cut the slices again to however big you would like to have them. I'm trying to match the size of the beans here. And I wasn't sure if I was going to use the scallions or not, so I figured I'd cut the tops off and get them ready if I'd changed my mind. And then the next thing we're going to do is jalapeno peppers. If you don't like jalapeno peppers at all, you can substitute just a regular green pepper or a sweet red pepper, orange pepper, yellow pepper. It doesn't matter, but I do like the jalapeno peppers. Now, I don't like them screaming hot, but I like a little bit of heat. So I'm going to cut them in half. I'll take the seeds out and most of the ribs out because the seeds in the ribs is where all the heat lives. So I want a little bit of heat there, so I decided to leave just a little bit of the ribs in. And if you're using these peppers, please be careful. Don't touch your face or your eyes until you've washed your hands. You will know it right away. And like I said, you want to kind of keep things all the same size. I do have a little bin on my cabinet door where I put my scraps. It's very handy to have it there. I've gotten used to it being there, and I really do like it a lot. It keeps it off the counter. It gives me more counter space. I did rinse my hands in between cutting the peppers up, just to make sure. And if you have a problem with cutting hot peppers, you can also wear some gloves. That will help with that. And we're going to get the parsley out, just to get it off the counter. Take out what I need. If you bang the parsley on the counter gently and then run your hand across the counter, if it needs to be cleaned, you'll be able to tell because the counter will have a sandy feel to it. So then you can wash your parsley again if you have to. And we're going to open our beans. I'm just waiting for the oil to heat up. Your pan should be up to medium-high heat before you put your peppers and onions in. And get these open because you'll want to wash the beans off along with your quinoa. And the oil should be hot enough by now. Get those in. And give it a stir just to get everything coated with the oil. Get another stir. That should cook anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes. You just want it to start getting soft. And we're going to get the tomato sauce opened. And I'm going to show you how to wash the quinoa. You always want to make sure you wash your quinoa. Quinoa is a seed, and there is a film on the outside of each little piece that is sort of very sticky and very bitter. So you want to make sure you wash it really well. I like to let it soak in lukewarm water. Anywhere from like 2 to 4 minutes. It depends. If you'll notice, the water is cloudy, and that's what you want to get rid of. So while that's soaking, I'm going to wash the beans. And you want to make sure you wash your beans really well too. The water that they're in is very starchy. And I find that if you rinse them off really well, it gets rid of that starchiness, which can mess with your digestion if you're not careful. At least mine. Some people it doesn't bother, but I like my beans washed off. And you just want to rinse them until they stop foaming. I use cold water to do this. And if you'll notice, see how they're foamy? When they're rinsed off completely, the bubbles stop. Lost a couple of them. I'm going to put them back in there. And just give them a shake off the excess water off of there. And then we'll go back to finishing washing the quinoa. And see how cloudy the water is? That's what you want to get rid of. That's where all the bitterness is. And I find the lukewarm water helps it come off a little bit faster. You don't have to soak it as long. And we're going to give it one more wash. Move it around a little bit. And if you'll notice, the water's clear. And if it's not, you can just let them sit for another 3 or 4 minutes. So we'll take that out, and then I'd like to run cold water over them just one more time, just to make sure. Get any of the residue off. And I do that to the quinoa no matter what I use it in. I always wash my quinoa. Okay, give the onions and peppers a stir. And we're going to move on to our spices. Now, because I never made this before, I decided to put my spices on a paper plate just so I could sort of gauge how much I was using. And this is granulated garlic. That's a teaspoon of that. And next is the chili powder. That's a whole tablespoon. And the coriander is next. And that's 2 teaspoons of coriander. Then the cumin, which is a teaspoon. And next is the smoked paprika. Which is 3/4 of a teaspoon. And then we're going to have some red pepper flakes, and that's a teaspoon. Or if you don't want it spicy, you can eliminate that. Okay, and next we're going to do some salt and pepper. I'm going to salt and pepper the onions and peppers. Give them a stir. And then I'm putting 2 teaspoons of salt on the plate, and that's more to flavor the beans than anything else. And so we'll get that in, give it a good stir. And next goes in the quinoa. And the beans. Now, stir it up real good and get our tomato sauce in. And then we're going to add the beef broth. Now, this is where I had said that you could make it vegetarian or vegan if you wanted to eliminate the beef broth and replace it with either vegetable broth or water. And it's 2 cups of whatever you choose to use. And I'm going to pour just a little bit in the can, swirl it around, make sure we get all the tomato sauce out of there. And then pour those both in. Give it a good stir. And at this point, turn the burner down because you just want this to simmer. I'm going to get our parsley chopped up. That's a 1/2 cup of fresh parsley chopped. And we're going to squeeze our lime in there. The lime just helps brighten all the other flavors that are in there. Because of the beans, sometimes it can get a little starchy, and the lime helps brighten everything. Now the next thing is some corn. If you want to use fresh corn, you can. And cut it off the cob and use fresh corn. I had some frozen corn in the freezer, so I decided to use that. And that will be 1.5 cups of corn. If you wanted to add some other vegetables to this too, you could. You could put carrots in it or string beans, anything you'd like. And get the corn in there and give it a good stir. And then we're going to cover it, and it's going to simmer anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. Now, if you would like this to be a little thinner, you could add some water after the quinoa is cooked. It would be a little bit more like a soup then, or you can let it go a little bit longer so it gets thicker, and it would be more like a stew. But if you'll notice, it's sort of halfway in between there. It's not too watery and not too thick. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and I hope you give it a try. And let me know if you have any questions. This was a fun one to do for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next recipe.